Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Russell Toll of Compassion Neuroscience. After graduating from West Point and subsequent deployment to Iraq, Dr. Toll received a PhD and expertise in TMS, EEG, and MRI at Stanford. After Iraq, Dr. Toll served as a casualty officer, and his experiences in that role motivated his drive to improve the care for Gold Star families, which we'll talk about in more detail later. He's an assistant professor of psychiatry at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, where he researches mood disorders as well as addiction. Welcome, Dr. Toll.
Thank you so much.
So we'll just launch right into it here. So understanding that mental health disorders, or understanding mental health disorders, is tricky enough,
Right.
but finding the best intervention for an individual is even more challenging.
hmm
Adding to this is a reluctance from certain populations to engage in mental health care, including the military community.
Right.
As a clinician, you must have stories about how getting the right kind of help improved the lives of some of your patients. And I'd love to hear more about your take on that and what motivated you personally to take up psychiatry as a profession.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate it. I didn't really choose psychiatry so much as I refused to keep watching my brothers and sisters suffer in silence. So it was a mission of necessity. It felt like I always cite myself as the accidental neuroscientist because I started out as a tank commander and through a very interesting series of events found myself at Stanford with the mission of getting better care to my people, to my tribe. And the thing that really stuck out to me about this, personalized approach to treatment is in the use of EEG. Because I've had a force recon Marine that we've been treating for a while. And, when you think about military stigma, you think about this guy. He's just a very, very tough guy. One of the most hard individuals you'd ever meet. But the tour after tour and the other struggles that he was going through were just indescribable. And so, what I was able to do by taking an EEG before and after treatment is get this brain connectivity wiring diagram and show them up on the screen. These areas are red, these areas are blue, and this is why. And this super hardcore Marine, it broke him down, and he said, "I knew it wasn't me." That if you're able to point to it, if I can give you an XYZ coordinate to it, then we've redefined this, and that's the most important tack for breaking this stigma is that we're reducing it from some nebulous, hard to define problem with you to a simple mechanical circuitry issue that I can point to it, say this area is blue, we need to make it red, this area is red, we need to make it blue, and keep it as simple as that. So reframing this as not treating labels, but treating a person with a specific connectivity, a specific wiring diagram, and a specific approach to healing.
That's amazing. So, speaking of EEG, given your background and expertise in TMS and EEG and MRI, is there a particular disorder about which you're especially passionate about treating, or is it a kind of an array of disorders that you're looking at?
It is an array, and what I'm excited about is we can get away from these DSM labels. Where I mean that was where we had to start. We had to start somewhere, right? So we needed a taxonomy to begin with, but as we learn more about each individual and create these very personalized, precision medicine driven diagrams that explain the actual human being in front of you and not these large swaths of groups, that we're seeing a better approach that doesn't require cluster A, cluster B. But that being said, the two populations that, of course, kind of rise to the top for me are working on PTSD because that's what I know. I know it from a scientific perspective. I know it from a personal perspective. And then the other population that I'm very excited about is postpartum depression, peripartum depression, because the ability for TMS to work in that specific population is potential that is hard to describe because we're able to use an intervention that has no pass-through effect for the baby. So instead of putting fluoxetine in the breast milk, step one, let's try this non-pharma intervention that has a better efficacy rate. And the thing I love about postpartum is when you save the patient, you save two. every time at least. So that it's the most rewarding one, I think, where you get to see all the best in humanity when the job's done right.
That's amazing, and such an interesting population to really focus on, because of course pharmacology has been, first line treatment for this for
Mhm.
many years, and I totally agree with you and think this is a really exciting
Well, and,
avenue of
and I'm a
research.
father of three, and I just love holding babies. So that's the other part of it.
Nothing better, nothing better. Um, so let's talk about this is my favorite part. Let's talk about the impact that you and the Compassion Neuroscience team
Mhm.
hope to achieve through your clinic. Are there any routine educational initiatives planned for your patients? And is there a platform through which you'd like to address a larger audience?
Yeah, that is getting our message out is what we want to achieve to this broader audience is to know about the work that we're trying to do with Compassion Neuro. We're trying to have a ethical, mission driven approach to modern medicine, to psychiatry, to delivering the care that people really need without having to navigate such a crushing bureaucracy. You know, like what if science was in the driver's seat? What if the putting the patient first was our North Star directive? So that's what we're trying to do there, and with compassion neuroscience involving patients in their own care, that's been actually one of the things that stuck out to me in this journey is just how much agency and feedback your patient has when they can see what their wiring is at the start, they can see it at midway, they know that they are there to report what they're feeling, those subjective scores, but um, being able to detect at various levels, not just subjectively but objectively, and that's the key to the changes that TMS is having on that circuitry. So not only what that patient is feeling, but based off the EEG, we have an empirical measure, you know, with numbers with decimal places that are useful, that are able to drive decisions and get back to where we need to be in evidence-based medicine. You know, the analogy that I use all the time is cardiology. That if you went to your heart doctor with a specific problem, they don't give you a questionnaire that says, "Are stairs hard for you? You know, do you feel a little winded?" They measure the organ they want to change. So they get out a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff, an EKG. They get measurements, do an intervention, repeat the measurements, and then see what changed. That is basic science, and that's the approach that's been missing for a very long time in the field of psychiatry and in the field of TMS. So I'm excited to mate appropriate measures with an appropriately powerful treatment.
That's great because you've got precision from the practitioner, and then you've got ownership from
Right.
the patient to say, I'm not just giving myself over to some sort of intervention. I'm actually seeing the results in real time. I'm providing feedback for it,
Mhm.
and you have some sort of. I assume that would play into the recovery as well. Uh,
Right.
Being
And
able to
one
own
of the
who you
things
are
I've
and
noticed,
what you're changing.
this has been pretty interesting too, where I'll have patients once they're in the rhythm and comfortable and feeling TMS the way only a patient can, they'll tell me what their brain wants, if that makes sense. They'll say that I've been feeling like I need um, continuous theta bursts at PZ lately. Like they're able to be that specific where they can match their subjective experience to what's going on in their lives to what they know is the best therapy for them.
Impressive.
It is cool.
uh,
One leaves a neuroscientist at the end of it.
yeah. Um, so specifically about TMS, how effective would you say has TMS been for your patients?
Mhm.
Specifically, how could it benefit certain populations? We talked about postpartum
Right.
and peripartum and PTSD. Um, but how could it benefit certain populations, especially as compared to traditional pharmacology?
Right. We already touched on the number one, and that is in postpartum, peripartum. I think that's a population that when pharmacology enters the conversation, that's straight to the front of the line. That's where our effort needs to be. The other population that's next up is my tribe, the veterans, because for a lot of the guys that come in, and what's been surprising that these aren't just regular vets like me. I was a very conventional soldier. I was tanks, nothing too special. But a lot of the people that have been coming through are the special ones, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, Force Recon guys. And a common refrain I hear from these are soldiers who are at a level that I can't even fathom. Their mental toughness is something that I don't have, and it's even difficult for me to fathom where they're operating at. And working with them is such a privilege. And what I hear time and again is I'm not taking one more pill. That they've been through the racket of the VA, and that's not necessarily an attack on pharmacology. It's just an observation of implementation gone wrong, whether that's at various levels of bureaucracy, various levels of pushing certain pharmacology. I can tell you from my personal experience, when I came back from my 14, 15-month tour in Iraq, as soon as we were walking down the steps of the plane and they gave us a brown paper bag of a variety of medications and said, take these and good luck to you, effectively. So that's one approach. I would argue we can do better, and that's where we're implementing it here. So the two populations that really benefit from this approach, who have not had the best experience with pharmacology, is our peripartum, postpartum, and our vets. So that those vets encompass, not just PTSD, but challenges associated with it, and that kind of spiral out into a greater sphere. And I'm not saying that it is TMS only and pharmacology has no place. In fact, I think that the next great leap is going to be involving pharmacology and what medication can best facilitate the effects of TMS, and what medication can best facilitate the duration of effect. I think that's going to be our next major challenge in the field. So you've already seen us trying to blend TMS with alternative approaches like ketamine, like psilocybin. That's all very exciting work, and I think that has to be steered by proper clinical trials, because you have a lot of power there, but you have a lot of potential for collateral damage there. So I see it as very promising, but it's got to be done right. And using pharmacology for those next steps is going to happen. So we need to have an acceptance of that and a very deliberate, cautious, and intelligent strategy moving forward.
Absolutely. Just as a follow-up to that, when a vet walks into your clinic, so they walk into the door, are they still reluctant to accept treatment, or is at that point
Mm-hmm.
they're just looking for an answer? They're looking for something that'll work. Are they primed to accept treatment like
Right,
this?
and they're looking for both those things. So they're looking for, number one, an answer to what in the hell is wrong. That
Mhm.
just I'm always reminded of the beach landing scene in Saving Private Ryan, where it's, what the hell do we do now, sir? That the willingness to move forward regardless, but just give me the plan, give me the direction, take charge, and show me the way. And that's effectively what we're doing. Where instead of guessing and going through another trial of medication A or medication B, is we're going to measure the organ we want to change. We're going to get this wiring diagram, and we're going to understand where you're at time now, and use that information to build a plan that considers the best protocols, the best application of TMS to get you from where you are now to where we want to be. And that's why I think those three components of this treatment, the EEG of knowing where my target is, my TMS to get my effects on target, and then neuronavigation to know where did we stimulate, and give me the data of, I need a timestamp of where we had that stimulation, and I need the XYZ of where that stimulation landed. Because when you're able to put a reticle over a target, soldiers can take it from there. Now we're back in our wheelhouse. That's what we know how to do. So if we can keep that shot group tight and maintain the precision, maintain that accuracy, and do that over the long term, that's when precise changes that are measurable and repeatable and can be consolidated over time, that's when we have the maximum effect. So we're able to see where we are now. We're able to check at the midpoint of, are we trending in the right direction? And we're able at baseline to say, here's what we look like at exit. Because right now, TMS is unassailably, just by the literature, it is powerful. It is a very effective treatment, but how we measure it is, want to say, embarrassing. That it is it is in need of change, because we're using such a powerful tool, and our metric of success is a 9-item questionnaire. The PHQ-9 coming in, PHQ-9 coming out. So you're using 9 questions, 9 subjective questions, to calibrate, define, apply a label to what kind of human being is in front of me. And that is not sufficient resolution to understand what is happening in that person's brain.
It's interesting to see how the precision of the approach
Yeah.
applies to the precision of the patient
Yeah.
themselves.
To my Air Force guys, I tell them it's dropping a JDAM out of a B-17 and using a Norden bomb sight to try and line it up. It is a mismatch and incongruency of technologies.
I see. So speaking of neuronavigation, I'd like to discuss a bit about the Visor 2 system that's currently in the clinic, the neuronavigation for TMS MRI based. What are your impressions of the system and neuronavigation
Mhm.
overall so far?
And I like Visor because it's what I know. That's what I was trained on at Stanford. So that very first veteran study, the Cohen veteran study that started in around 2012, that's when, I think that was one of Visor's very first applications. Certainly it was at Stanford. And so we both had a learning curve there. So I remember working closely with the engineering team, and we got it to where we really liked it. To what I was able to do is use fMRI, or these functional brain maps, and import that into the neuronavigation. So when you're answering the question of where do you want to shoot, that is using not just a random idea or an atlas, or Brodmann's area and let's hope for the best. No, you use functional MRI, or you can use EEG activation maps and overlay that onto that patient's brain and say, based on the data, I want to go here. And then you're able to mark that XYZ on the brain. And then from that point forward, what I really like about it is a handoff, to where it takes expertise. You have to suffer through grad school in order to know where XYZ go. But once you have XYZ marked, from that point forward, just about anyone can line it up. So that facilitates expansion, that facilitates efficiency. So now that it's treatment day and everything's already loaded, all that tech, if I were doing it, all I have to do is say Russ wants to go at this particular coordinate, left aim FG at XYZ here, then all they have to do is load it up, set the parameters right, and then again we're back into a soldier's fundamental wheelhouse of line the red sight up with the green sight and go to work.
What are your thoughts on kind of the impact of the
Mhm.
three uh, axes that you have to think about: the rotation, tilt,
Yeah.
distance, things like that. What are your thoughts on how important those are for administration of TMS
Well,
on the neuronal level?
yeah, they're everything. Is you're asking an oil guy, is it important to drill straight down or at an angle? That it is
Mm.
being in the right spot is at least 50% of the fight. But again, that drill angle, that matters so much, because that electromagnetic field, to nerd out in the quaternions for a minute, that the field decays at it's not linear, it's geometric. So if you double the distance, the magnetic field is 4 times weaker. So degrees matter. It is what I'm saying, that you have to not only know where to line up, but you have to have orientation right. So the takeaway message from this is that it is nuanced and it requires the correct equipment to get the correct job done, to be able to line up appropriately and have a record of treatment. That's the other major benefit of using neuronavigation, is that every single stimulation has a timestamp of when it happened, where it happened, the XYZ of the coil, XYZ of the target, and the deviation. And that last column is so important because that's, again, your metric of success that doesn't have anything to do with subjectivity. That it's got 3 decimal places on it. So I can measure how accurate we were, how precise we were, and you can identify trends over time. Or am I doing a good job as a tech? If I can stay sub 3 millimeter, sub 2 millimeter, and that is a bold statement to be able to convey to patients that I can guarantee that we are going to hit the target, and I can prove it to you with this printout.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is that patients enjoy seeing that
Yeah.
precision in real time, but in real time or in an audited session review, right?
No,
Where
no,
they
we
say,
do it
okay,
all the
you hit
time.
the target.
If you're a child of the 80s or 90s like me, that every time we line it up, that the Top Gun, from original Nintendo with the refueling scene where
Yes, of
it's
course.
ABBVA, I have that song in my head every single time that they're lining those coils up. So you can always tell who your 90s buddies are because they'll do the same thing. But that again, that goes back to patient's agency. So when you're in the chair and you see that screen in front of you, you can see how the slightest head movements are sweeping across centimeters. So you're able to not only be in control and be involved in the treatment, but you are your own quality assurance, where you are actively participating in the treatment, and you can begin to feel not just from a therapeutic standpoint, but from an agency involvement, participant, and science standpoint, where you get to control the parameters of your own treatment. And that's a very empowering feeling.
For sure. You're engaged in your own treatment instead of Jesus take the wheel type of thing
Right.
of handing over the keys and saying, fix me,
Mhm.
versus being engaged in the process in
Exactly.
real time and afterwards. That's fascinating. So one more kind of uh, theoretical question before I get into the clinic
Mhm.
itself. In an ideal world, if there was one kind of technological advancement or integrated tool that could help your practice achieve the intended effect that you would like to have on your patients, what would it be? We're imagining the ideal world here.
But you don't have to imagine too much of a Star Trek environment because the answer is closed loop real time neurofeedback. And what that means is we've got EEG, that's a very powerful tool to measure. We've got TMS, that's a very powerful tool to change. The challenge right now is you can't do them at the same, or you can measure at the same time, but you can't react on a time scale shorter than about a day or hours or so, right? So if I got your EEG before lunch, I could pick out the target that we want to go after, and then an hour or so later, we could go after that target and measure those effects with EEG, and then I'll look at those effects overnight, and we'll talk about them the next day. That's about as fast as we can possibly go at scale right now. What I want to be able to do is have that EEG send its data back to the computer, say the brain looks like this right now, change the parameters of the coil right now, and do this iterative hotter, hotter, colder, colder, and dial it in exactly to the parameters you want to change. So I can ask the EEG, I want the salience network mean connectivity to reach this number, change the parameters until we hit it. And do, for the Army guys listening, this is just artillery bracketing. To take a 200 down 100, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's left, right, drop until we're ready to fire for effect. And once you're in that 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 target area, you're able to pick up the instantaneous measure. Because if you're not familiar with EEG, what you need to know about it is that it can sample faster than the brain can fire. So you have perfect temporal resolution. You're able to isolate phenomena that happens at sub-millisecond scales. And when you have that type of fidelity, you're able to effectively in real time or near real time see what you're changing in the brain. And being able to tweak that in a very iterative loop will require us to have a lot more funding. But the concept of how to do it is there. There isn't the theory is not that difficult. The funding is.
Yeah, I mean that's a topic of great interest across the field that closed loop, and there's many different definitions of closed loop.
Right.
But the true closed loop is kind of the secret sauce that everyone
Mhm.
is seeking. And I know from a company perspective, we're certainly very interested in that and pursuing it from a technological perspective as well. So we'll have our own feedback loop from the practitioners of this
Right.
and the technological advances of this.
Right. And I think the broader implications for that it's not just being high resolution, very precise, but there's this trend of accelerated protocols, and they're getting shorter and shorter. And the hard question to answer is, what's the saturation point? How quick can we go and still maintain the best therapeutic effect? And the only way to answer that, in my opinion, effectively is in closed loop, and being able to look at the brain as you're changing connectivity.
I want to get into this wonderful service that you've been offering. Among many reasons that your work is important, Compassion Neuroscience provides free of charge services for Gold Star family
Right.
members, with a mission to provide treatment to the immediate family of our nation's fallen for free for life, which is both
Correct.
exciting and inspiring. Um, I'd like to kind of go back in time, and could you tell us more about treating your first patient, who was a mother of,
Right.
also a Gold Star family?
Yeah, that's right, and not just any Gold Star family member. That it was a very emotionally salient event for me because that was my soldier. So Specialist Jake Veloza was in my unit. We He was a great guy. We fought alongside each other all through that Iraq 2006 2008 tour, and he was killed May 2nd, 2009. So I during that those casualty operations, I was one of those casualty officers that assisted the Velozas, Bob and Susie, his parents, and he was an only child. So I call Bob and Susie the best friends I ever had that I wish I never had to meet. But over the years, we've become very, very tight. And one of the biggest challenges in those early days was getting them help, specifically Susie, trying to get her into grief counseling at the VA. And that was, I had to call in all my blue chip connections, all the colonels and generals I knew to try and get this Gold Star mother the care she needed. And I'm not complaining about the VA because the VA's mission is to care for the spouse and the kids. There's no provision there for parents, for siblings, for spouses who later remarry. And that is the gap that I just thought it had to be filled. And I tell people a lot that there is so many people better qualified to run an enterprise and try to accomplish the mission of running a business. I just had to do it because no one else was in a position to do it. So for fellow military folks, I feel like I was leading a battalion level attack as a private because I was the only one left alive. I had to do it because I was in the right place at the right time. So once we got that enterprise in motion, it had to be Susie to be the first patient, and that was very personally satisfying because if you've never undertaken a new business enterprise, there are trials and tribulations around every corner, and you don't know what you don't know until you hit it. There is blunt force learning the entire time. How to file your taxes, how to do this and that, and by the time we were brick and mortar, and my wife Heidi and I had sold every part of savings we had. We nuked our 401k to buy that first MagVenture system. By the time I saw Susie in that chair, that was when I knew I kept my promise to Jake because that was what the last thing I told him. When you're the unit representative, you're the last one with the soldier, so it's your job to get out the ruler and make sure the ribbons are straight. You give them the last message from the unit, and then you move on with the mission. And I remember telling Jake that I promise you, man, I'll take care of your parents. And that clinic, that moment, represented what we do in the cab. We keep our word.
I just want a moment to let that sink in. That's extremely powerful, and your connection, not only with this family, but kind of your experience as a combat vet, to be able to empathize and
Mhm.
talk in the same language as a lot of your patients.
Yeah,
Um, do you feel like
the
that
language
is
is a little salty at times, but
yeah,
if I
right?
can't speak it, I can even talk to Marines. I'm that fluent.
I mean, there's a different language in the American military that that just seems I can tell from talking to you and some of my friends who are combat vets,
Mhm.
particularly around that time in Iraq and Afghanistan, that there's a lexicon that probably is unique to where it sets them more at ease than a conventional therapeutic session. We talked about them being kind of primed to engage in the mission as they walk in the door, but I
Sure.
assume seeing somebody with their perspective has to be some sort of a comforting element to the therapeutic process.
Yeah, it is, and that's why it's interesting. In most TMS clinics, it's about two-thirds female, one-third male for the general population. Our clinic is about half and half. In fact, maybe even 55% male, and that has to do with our heavy influence in the veteran community. That vets are going to be more receptive to someone who has been there as well, where this is less of a treatment and more of another mission. This is just one more time we got to go outside the wire together. I know what I'm doing. Just get in the trucks. We'll be all right.
How do people find you? Obviously we're hopefully we're connecting with some people that can broaden the scope of your network
Right.
here. But what how are you getting the word out right now about this very unique, very specific, but also very necessary treatment scene?
Right now, it's been a lot by word of mouth because we haven't spent one penny on marketing because we're very scrappy, to make rent, to make the systems work and survive till next paycheck, next month. We've had to be very extremely efficient. I've called upon my old skills as an Army XO. I could use. I miss my E4 mafia for acquiring things and making things happen. Um, but right now, the way we get our word out is compassionneuroscience.org. We're on the web and we're on LinkedIn. So at compassionneuroscience.org, you can see what our mission is, what we're about, and the changes that we're undergoing right now to get the best care we can out there. So I've gotten a lot of good help on the business side, and we've got a strategy moving forward. But our North Star that never changes, the promise that will never be broken, is our gold stars will be taken care of for free for life. That will not change under any circumstance.
That's incredible. I would like to open it up for a few questions from our audience. What is your day to day while we're waiting for these questions to come in? What does your day to day look like? Are you
Yeah.
engaged? I know you're balancing between academic life and clinic life, but how does that work out on a practical level these days?
Yeah, it is very busy. But these are 18 to 20-hour days right now, which I'm not the old combat stud I used to be. I'm kind of an older man now, so I have to load up with ibuprofen at the start of every day. But I'm wearing two hats right now. I'm faculty at UT Southwestern, which is unaffiliated with Compassion Neuroscience, and in that role, it's so rewarding because I get to be on the front lines of what is happening in the field of TMS and EEG and MRI, where we're running the clinical trials for NIMH, for NIDA, and seeing the effects that TMS can have in these very vulnerable populations, and being trusted with the EEG, the data there to make the inferences that are guide the field. So that has been a very rewarding component of this work, and it's been a benefit to the work we want to do because I know what the cutting edge is because I'm doing it 9 to 5. The deal is before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. That's when we're at the clinic. So 9 to 5 at UT, all other hours treating folks at the clinic and home usually around 11 p.m. or midnight. So it is a intense schedule right now, but just like you know, any vet can tell you when the mission matters, there's nothing you can't do. You can go for days, you can go for weeks, you can endure whatever you have to do when troops are in contact. And that's the mentality that we have here, where we are going to take care of our people, regardless of what it takes. And in order to make that happen, in later after September, I'll be transitioning to part time at UT Southwestern, so we'll be able to be in the clinic more and still cultivate that relationship between the two worlds, where I can keep one foot in academia and one foot on the front line with my guys where I belong.
That's so unique to be able to translate the research and the cutting edge of the technology into clinical practice. You see it at NIH, like internally, but
Mhm.
it's rare to see, in the kind of the general population, right?
Right.
But it's also really really necessary
Hmm.
to move the field forward and also to translate it directly to patients that can use this.
Totally.
Okay, we have a few questions coming in.
All right.
So let me start here with a question. In terms of emotional resilience and strength that is required in your role in the U.S. Army and now to handling patients that want to undergo TMS therapy, what have been some key learnings and takeaways?
Well, one of the key things that has really resonated with me that didn't really connect when I was in is our code of conduct. That for the guys that come in, for when you're a service member, doesn't matter, Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, that you have to take certain oaths and agree to live your life by certain codes, and one of those is the code of conduct, and Article 3 in that states that I will never surrender of my own free will, and reminding our guys of that you are here to continue the fight. That I think, especially among vets and among first responders, the firemen that we see, and the police officers we see, they're always so externally focused on helping others that it never even computes that they need to take care of themselves. And it requires a reframing that you have to listen to the flight attendant, put your own mask on first, that we can't do our job of taking care of our people, of taking care of my troops, of your firefighters. We're not effective leaders if we can't lead from the front, show the guys that I care enough about my health that I'm going to do this. I'm going to get better so I can be a stronger leader. That's the contextual reframing that draws on the strength of what we learn to be in the service and what we continue to be as veterans and as our community's first responders.
It's interesting. So your population has grown from veterans, and
Mhm.
we talked about the postpartum as well, but also to first responders. I didn't realize that
Right,
to
right,
kind of
and that
similar mentalities, right?
exactly, yeah. They're in fact, I think, in a lot of ways, their job is much harder than mine ever was. For there's a lot of things that I'm capable of as a soldier that I know I am not the right person for the job as in law enforcement. They have a much more challenging fight, I think, in my personal perspective, than the things I went through.
Interesting. Yeah, very different. I would assume
Right.
there are some shared insights, but also some different experiences. Another question is, are there any insights or metrics on the adoption rate of TMS therapy that you've seen so far in Gold Star families?
Uh, just the very early beginnings that no statistician on earth would let me get away with. Putting out there is our sample size is so low because this has been the first really concerted effort to deliver TMS to Gold Stars. So every data point we get is effectively the first of its kind. So what I can tell you by the rough numbers is we're almost to triple digits and of the total patients served at the clinic, and among them, it's been about 12 are Gold Star family members. Um, and we obviously want to get that up, and again, that is what we were able to achieve by word of mouth alone. And I didn't want what was so important to me is that the standard can never change, especially when it comes to my Gold Stars. I'm very protective of them. So I remember the major who was in charge of me in the Army when I got tasked to be a casualty officer. He told me, Russ, you only have one glass ball here. I know you're juggling dozens of balls in the air, but only one of these is made of glass, and that's casualty operations. So if you set the motor pool on fire and lose all your equipment, I will be understanding and forgiving, but you cannot ever fail at this one mission. And that has stuck with me. And making sure that it gets done right is why we have built deliberately and why we have built slowly, because there, you don't know what you don't know, and until you go through these incremental evolutions, and through each iteration get better and better in the services you provide, because when we have a gold star in the chair, it will be perfect.
That's interesting how the military idioms and translate to neuroscience in particular. You know, these phrases are used, you know, as kind of a maxim, but they do apply
Yeah,
outside
it
of
is.
like a battlefield or outside of a training session, things like that. It's nice to see that translated into to practice. Um, so,
There's a lot more of that than we realize. I was just thinking about everything we have, or all of our SOPs, and yeah, everything's an acronym that never changes.
of course, in neuroscience and
Right.
otherwise. Um, oh my goodness, we've got so many good questions. I'll go to this one. Do you eventually plan? We talked about this before the closed loop. Do you eventually plan on incorporating simultaneous EEG TMS for your patients? And what added value would you see in the combination of approaches?
Right. That it is more than the sum of their parts, and absolutely, that's where we are going to get to, because that is going to unlock the knee of the curve as far as TMS development. And in my humble opinion, from my perspective, the ability to incorporate all those technologies and do so in near real time or actual real time is going to be what changes this from a niche treatment to a frontline, first line, most effective intervention. I wanted to do for our field kind of what GLP-1s have done in their field, where it is such a revolution. Making it accessible is going to be a paradigm shift of giving people their best lives back.
Amazing. Um, so I want to give two more questions because, as you mentioned, you're 9 to 5 and you're otherwise
I
is
have an
very, very
exception for today.
important.
I got off. Yeah.
There's an interesting question here. Please help us revisit what an ideal intake round looks like for one of your patients that sign up for TMS. Like kind
Right.
of the
So
first steps.
yeah, so you would go to the website, kind of poke around, see what we're about, and say, all right, I want to learn more, or I want to drop in. Then you just scroll to the bottom, you see that contact info, send that over. I get an email. I reply back to you and say, hey, Jane, or hey, John, saw that you reached out. Would you like to come by, and I can demonstrate the tech right in front of your eyes? And that's actually one of my favorite times, because I want everyone to arrive a skeptic. I want you to come in hard and say that this is one more thing that isn't going to work, and then I want to watch your eyes as I move your arm against your will, and see that, it is, we can debate academically whether it's therapeutic or not, but what is unassailably true is I just made your arm move. And if I can prove to you that I'm affecting your motor cortex right now, I can affect your cognitive network right now as well.
That's interesting. So you have a prove it mentality going into it,
Yep.
which I assume it
Oh, yeah,
translates well to the
we work with
population.
vets. That's the first thing they're going to say. All right, doc, prove it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
got
Move
you.
my arm.
I'm ready for you.
Okay, so the last one, actually, yeah, I'll end with this. Is Compassion Neuroscience planned at any conferences or network events this year? What's on your radar for the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, the next 6 to 12 months is growth, because what the purpose of compassion neuroscience is to facilitate care for those Gold Star family members. So if it is not in direct service of that mission, then we direct those resources to make that the prime directive. So we have to stay scrappy and we have to stay lean, because it is, we're entirely self-funded right now, and that's actually a point of pride for me too. That I spent a decade at Stanford in Silicon Valley with the tech bros, and when I got on the bullhorn on LinkedIn and said, hey, buddies, I'm going to do this 501c3 to take care of gold stars, just about nothing came from Silicon Valley. The reason that we still exist today and the reason we were able to build what we have built is because sergeants and corporals have kicked in $20 and $40 at a time repeatedly at a scale large enough for us to be able to pay the rent. And that sticks with me, that the guys have trusted, the old LT, Crazy Red One, with the mission, and that their trust will not be misplaced.
It's an incredible mission, an incredible, uh, amazing thing that you've built. And we want to do our part to amplify that as much as possible. I really want to thank you for joining us, for getting your message out, and really impacting the audience and certainly me with your stories and background and everything.
No, thanks.
Um,
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
yeah, we're looking forward to many more discussions like this with you and your team. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks so much to Dr. Russell Toll. You can find more about his landmark practice at compassionneuroscience.org. Thank you again, Dr. Toll, and we will see everyone later.
See you then. Take care.